Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the ice cream company from Vermont called Ben & Jerry's. They love to get political and woke and dabble in activism pretty much all the time. We've covered them a few times here on the channel and they've spread SJW propaganda repeatedly. Lots of it influenced on being kind of these white guilt-ridden jerks who tend to favor minorities and women over all the other people, they hate white people, they hate men, they hate straights. This is a pro-alphabet company who isn't afraid to show it. It's very interesting. It's very funny how active they try to be and how woke they try to be too, because as I said, a lot of this comes back to them being suffering from white guilt. It's run by a couple of old white dudes and they're constantly trying to virtue signal, like almost like they're embarrassed or ashamed of being so successful, so they constantly try to virtue signal and say, we love the minorities, we love anyone who's not white, we love black and brown people, we love alphabet, and they just throw that out there and they do these little promotions all the time. It's very lame, very just annoying. It's seriously kind of like, why don't they just focus on ice cream? They're an ice cream company. I've had their ice cream. It is good. Of course it's good. I mean, it's kind of hard to mess up ice cream, but they make quality products when they want to. And I actually remember going to Ben & Jerry's a year or two ago when they last came up with one of these stories, and I tried the ice cream just to spite them because they had a new flavor. It was like that woke flavor they came up with that was supposed to represent like struggle or something like that, a struggle, peak and resist. That's what it was called. It was called Peak and Resist instead of Weak and Resist, and it was just trying to be this pro-progressive protesting kind of thing, like, oh, we're demonstrating, we're fighting the power, but really they're the power and they're just pretending to be woke and all this stuff for the wrong reasons. Again, like I said, this company is run by a certain kind of people who are embarrassed about themselves and they try to virtue signal to the minorities, and it gets really old really quick. So let's go ahead and jump right into this new one. It says, this is a fact. This deadly health scare disproportionately impacts Black Americans. Learn more and take action. And then you can see this interesting graphic here that I find very funny. It says, Black Americans make up 30% of U.S. patients, while Black Americans make up 13% of U.S. population. So this is kind of interesting because this is the same argument that you can make about another situation. There's crime, and the number of people that are in prison are this proportion too. There's way more blacks in making crimes and in prison, and it's way overrepresented compared to the 13% population. But we're supposed to ignore that. We can't point that out. We can't notice that. That's obviously a truth, but we can't talk about that. Instead, we're talking about them suffering from the sickness more, and this goes back to the whole idea of that they're trying to say this virus is racist or something. I mean, I'm not really sure if that's the exact implication. That's part of it, and then the other part is just saying, oh, these black people are suffering more, they have more problems, and they're having this issue more, so they have to deal with it more. We need to recognize them. And if that was really the case, I mean, that could be a fair statement. It's like I could understand why they might want to promote that, but the truth of the matter is there's more black people suffering from the illness because of their own choices. It's because of where they live, how they act, and things that they do to not avoid getting sick. This is the same explanation we could use for crime. They're getting arrested more because of stuff they do. They're committing more crimes. They're doing bad things and getting caught, and I have nothing against them. Like I said, I'm not trying to be an offensive person. I'm not trying to attack or go after anyone, but when you see a graphic like this, I have to speak the truth. I can't help myself, and that's just the fact of the matter. We went over another story like this just last week. We went over that Now This video, which was complaining about the cops in Chicago breaking up this party, and then you see videos of the party, and it's like 200 all minority people shoulder to shoulder in a closed space, hot, sharing drinks, sharing smokes. They're just all doing exactly the opposite you should be doing to prevent this sickness. And then we're coming to something like this and they're saying, oh, well, Black Americans need help. Black Americans are suffering. There's racism here. But really, we're just going back to it being their own fault. I mean, I'm sorry that some of them are stuck in areas that are more confined. They're in urban centers more. They're in closed-in, tight cities. alleys, people walking by each other more. I mean, that's the reality, and that's a harder situation to kind of change, to move into a whole new area. But there are other choices they're making. There are people that are partying. Obviously, we've seen a number of these parties with all black people having birthday parties, having a smoke party, having, you know, what they called quarantine parties. And all we're saying is it's by their own choices here. Not trying to attack them, but if you bring up this BS defense here, I'm just going to have to bat it down a little bit. And you know, it's pretty ridiculous. And as you can see, this tweet is getting proper reactions. It's got a pretty bad ratio, a lot more replies than likes, which is never a good sign. Matt Christensen says, this is a fact. People disproportionately go to you for ice cream, not political lectures. Well put. They have no credentials in politics whatsoever. I mean, I don't know why they think they do. Someone says their new flavor is vanilla shame. Nicely done. Ice cream. 13%. Someone stamped it, tweet stamped. So basically a little Joker action. Thank you, Ben & Jerry's, for telling us how to be woke. Sir, this is a Wendy's. I love this series, but be careful. I know many people that tried to do this with FBI crime statistics, and Twitter says it violates their terms of service. Okay, this is a perfect example of what I mentioned earlier. If you mention the same kind of 13% are overrepresented somewhere in crime statistics, that gets you called racist. That could get you flagged or kicked off the internet. But if you mention it with this virus thing and you say they're getting more cases, then it's like, oh, you're a hero, you're saving them, you've discovered this hidden racism, you've discovered that black people are the victims once again, which just isn't true. It's not based in reality, and there's explanations for both of it, like what we went over. Now, with that said, let's get off of Twitter and see what more of this article says. We could go to the actual Ben & Jerry's website. Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by this virus. This is from May 1st. It says, one thing you may have heard people saying about this virus since it reared its ugly head late last year is that the virus doesn't care what color your skin is, where you live, or how much you make. While it's theoretically true that all beings being equal, everyone is at risk of getting sick, all things aren't equal. For proof, take a look at the data. Black and brown people are getting sick and dying at a disproportionately higher rate than white people. Last week, research from Johns Hopkins University found that the death rate in predominantly black counties was 6 times that in predominantly white counties. In Chicago, black people make up 1/3 of the population but account for more than half of the cases and nearly 70% of deaths. In New York City, black and Latinx people are dying at twice the rate of white people. We call that not exactly equal, and yet medical professionals have confirmed there's no medical reason behind the unequal rates of suffering. So why are black and brown people getting sick and dying at a faster rate? It can largely be explained in just 2 words: systemic racism. Oh my God, I didn't think I was going to get to that today. I didn't know they were going to get that specific, but it is because of racism, and apparently nothing anyone does is their own fault, even though we went over the pretty obvious reasons. If you live in certain areas, if you don't follow the rules, if you don't listen to authority, if you don't wear your mask, if you don't follow quarantine orders, you're going to get sick more fast. I mean, are they really assuming that all these people are acting the same? If one group of people, it doesn't matter what color they are, if they could be purple, but if the purple people decide to all stay in their basements and not leave their houses and all stay 6 foot apart within those basements from other people, they're obviously not going to get sick more. But then if you have this group of orange people who go out and party and they don't listen to the rules and they're hanging out together and they're sharing drinks and hugging and kissing and doing something else like that, obviously they're going to get sick more. But in this situation, that's all ignored. There's no authority, there's no agency to all these people. These people can't be blamed for their own actions, and that's why they're blaming systemic racism, which is just systemic institutions of industrialized racism. It's just made up nonsense. There's no proof, there's no actual racism. It's just, this is just what they blame everything on. But with that said, let's go ahead and read into it a little bit and see what they have to say. Systemic racism permeates every level of our society, from the obvious segregation in schools and racial profiling to more subtle injustices such as those evident in real estate unemployment rates and salary data. It's also terrifyingly evident in healthcare, where the mortality rate among black babies born in the U.S. is twice the rate as for babies in local racial groups. Stark inequalities persist in adulthood as well. Black people are more likely to die from cancer and heart disease than white people, and more than twice as likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. Probably because they're eating more fatty foods. People of color are also far less likely to have the kind of health care that would help in times of crisis, and less likely to have access to top doctors. So it sounds like they're just blaming everything on racism. They see two groups having different reactions to a crisis, and since the one group is their preferred group and they're doing worse, they're saying, oh, it's because of racism. It's not anything they did. It's not their fault anyway whatsoever. We can't let them be accountable for their actions. It's racism. It's because of these kind of big buzzwords, these things hanging over everything. And it goes back to the classic liberal explanation too. They see two differences and they blame racism. The racism is implied, though it's not really specifically stated. Like, in my opinion, racism is more concrete. If you want to really call something racist, you have to have proof that a racist act was done. For example, a simple one could just be calling someone a racial slur, or you could fire someone from a job because of their race, or you could beat someone up, like this and that. These are examples of actual racist things, and you could have proof for them. You could have a documentation, you could have a video, a picture, a quote, a witness. But what we're talking about here with Ben and Jerry's is just these implied racist ideas, and they see differences and they think they can assume racism. So it's assumed racism on a systemic level, which is ridiculous. It's just saying the whole country is racist and anyone that's not white here is going to have a problem. And it doesn't matter what they say or do. They have no agency. They can't pick themselves up, nor can they bring themselves down. They're just like children, according to Ben and Jerry's, which is kind of this sort of bigotry of low expectations. If you think about it, if you treat people like this and assume that they're not in charge of their own lives, it's actually kind of offensive on its own. I'm not for that. I think we should be able to give everyone their own authority over their own lives, and you're in charge of you. If you do a thing, you're responsible. Sure, there are accidents. Sure, racism still happens. We're not saying it doesn't and never ever happened either, but it's certainly not on this scale that they're implying. And these kinds of results that they're coming to, it's not accurate. They're not because of racism. They're not more cases in this certain group because of racism. It's because different people are acting different ways. We've seen the party footage. I can show you a clip of it again right here. This is from that last video. These people are partying, and this is a common occurrence. We've seen a number of people in this minority group partying while they're supposed to be quarantining, but then they want to say, oh, they're getting more cases because of racism. It's like, no, it's because of what they've done. The impacts of systemic racism on communities of color are made even more clear by the current pandemic. Employees all across the country, for example, are being told to work from home while quarantines are put into effect from coast to coast. But it turns out that being able to work from home is a privilege largely enjoyed by white people. Oh, that's our fault too. Us having jobs that are more accessible at home is our crime. Oh, sue us. As such, a large proportion of essential workers, janitors, cleaners, grocery store employees, bus and train operators are people of color who have to go to work to get paid. In New York City, 75% of these frontline workers are people of color. And if you can't work from home and are already dealing with pre-existing conditions, you're at a higher risk of severe illness from this sickness. Here's the kicker. You're also 6 times more likely to obtain a coveted test if you live in a higher income community than if you're poor. While income isn't necessarily analogous to race, groups such as the We Must Count Coalition believe there's a strong correlation between race and the testing conducted. So it shouldn't surprise us that we're in the middle of what Ibram X. Kendi, director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at American University, called a racial pandemic within a viral pandemic. Oh my God, so much nonsense in here. I don't even know where to start. Basically, the way I see it is they're just trying to attack white people again. Ben and Jerry's are a couple of white guys with a lot of white guilt, and they want to blame everything on themselves. They're ashamed and embarrassed that they got so successful. This is their way to try to give back. It's coming off very poorly, though. This is not the way to do it. Donate to a charity. Help support something interesting or neutral. You don't have to get woke and political to kind of give back to people. And especially the worst part here is they're trying to be anti-white. I mean, it's like obvious as hell. They're anti-white people. They're bashing us. They're saying we don't deserve what we've earned and what we got. We built this country. We earned our jobs. We saved our money. We did the right thing. We followed the rules. And somehow we're racist because we're doing better than another group who isn't following the rules, who's doing things worse, who's not getting trained and getting the jobs they want, which is upsetting. I mean, I wish everyone could be happy with where they are and what they work with, but that's not everyone else's fault. If you can't get a job, if you can't come up out of your place, you need to work harder. You need to fight and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I know that sounds like a cliche. I know that people don't believe that works right now, but that's the same thing all these other groups did. I know they try to act like white people had never, we had some unfair advantages, but it's just not true. We pulled ourselves up too, and so can you. And that's a good positive message to leave here. And I think it's better than anything you've heard from Ben & Jerry's. Their message is just racism. Their message is anti-white and also coddling the minorities like they're children. Thanks for watching today's video. Make sure you guys leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be liking and responding to comments that I like, and also be getting ready for a new video to bring to you guys next week. Also, make sure you check out our second channel, No BS News, because they've got some more videos on there for you guys. I've been producing a third video each day and putting it on the second channel to give you guys more content. So subscribe on there. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw, and we'll see y'all next time.